Okay, let's start today's session. Hi everyone, welcome to day 3 of basic to advanced level performance testing using JMeter tool. So in last session, guys, we discussed about the server, right? So what is server, what server will do, right? So what is client, right? And also the application architecture and what are the three tiers that we have in application architecture, right? So, again, right, major three tiers are two tier, three tier, and entire architectures, right? So we discussed each and every point related to the three tier, entire architecture, like how the servers are going to be added, right? So whenever it is required, auto scaling concept and everything, right? So with this basic idea, we'll jump into today's session. So today's session is also theory session, guys. So those who are new, those who are moving from automation or manual to performance testing, okay, for them it will be useful. So those who are already in performance testing, you may know these concepts, but okay, just consider this as a recap, okay. And one more important thing is today is the third day, right? So this is the last free session, okay. So we'll discuss after the session, like what the process is for registration and everything. Okay. So with these basic things, we'll jump into today's session, right? So we'll start with what is performance testing, right? So already we discussed this slide, right? But on a high level, we'll go ahead and discuss for one more time, right? So that like it will be a continuation for us. So we'll start from what is performance testing. Performance testing already we know, right? So we have client as well as we have server, right? So whenever if more number of clients accessing the application which is there on the server, right, then obviously there are chances that the server may be overburdened because of the number of users, right? So your application behavior is also going to vary based on the number of users, not only the application servers, but also your application uh, behavior also will vary, right? So this will completely affect your application performance, right? So that is the reason why under increased load, right? Under increased load as well as your edge conditions, how your application is going to behave, okay? That we are going to do here, right? Under this performance testing process, right? So what are the edge conditions, right? What are the edge conditions? We already discussed that, right? The four edge conditions are mainly speed, stability, scalability, as well as the reliability, right? So we already discussed this also with the help of examples, but let me quickly go ahead with the recap, right? So speed here is nothing but in terms of the response times. Okay, speed always measures in terms of the response times, right? So how we can say an application is best application is if that application response times are less, right? So if that application response times are less, then I can say that application is a proper application, okay, and that application performance is good, right? So whenever if you are doing the performance testing, we need to keep in mind that whether the response times are coming less or not, right? So within less time, are we going to get the response or not? That is the major concern here for us. Okay. So coming to the next edge condition that we need to remember is stability. Okay. So here, what we are going to do is we are going to run the application for a very long time, guys. Okay. So we are going to run the application for a very long time with a stable user load. Okay. So let us say if 100 users, let us say with 100 users, if we are running the application continuously for a very long time, right? Then how your application is behaving, right? Whether the performance of the application is degrading or not, right? And whether are we getting any break even, right? So that means after some time your application is completely not able to serve any request or not, right? So those kind of things we are going to verify here, right? So that is the reason why we are going to call this as the stability here, right? So coming to the next one is the scalability, right? So scalability is nothing but you are going to test whether your application can handle the higher increased you handle the increased user load or not. Okay, let us say today we have like some 1,000 users accessing this application, right? So next year, because of the popularity, again some more users may come, right? So it may increase up to 2K or 3K users, right? So in that case, right, what will happen, whether with the same hardware configurations, whatever that you have, right? So will your servers able to handle that increased in user load or not, right? Or are we seeing any performance degradation, right? So that will depict the scalability here. And coming to the last one, that is the reliability, right? So reliability and stability, it looks almost the same as we discussed on the last session, right? So the only difference is in stability, we are going to run the application for very long duration, okay, but with a fixed number of users, right? But here we are going to again run the application for longer duration, but with high user traffic, guys. So in this case, we are going to use high user traffic, right? So like high user traffic, if you are running the application for longer duration, right, you are going to still if your application is able to handle that, then we can say like that application is reliable, right? So the major thing that we are going to look into here is the wrong responses, right? If we are getting any wrong responses from the server, then obviously it is not reliable thing, right? So these are the 4 edge conditions that we need to keep in mind, okay, whenever if we are doing the performance testing, yeah, right? So we already know that like quality assurance team, QA team will handle this performance testing process, right? And again, performance testing, it will come under the non-functional testing. There will be separate team here, okay? So functional team is different and non-functional team is different. So QA team, again, divided into 2 types here in this case. So 2 teams separately, right? So the main aim of doing this performance testing is to identify the performance bottlenecks, right? So we already discussed what are bottlenecks, right? So bottlenecks are nothing but which is going to simply stop your application performance or which will affect your application performance, right? What are the things which are going to affect your application performance? We are going to call that as a bottleneck here, right? So that's what we have discussed in our last session, right? So quickly, I'll move to the bottleneck slide. So we already discussed this. Bottlenecks are the individual points, right? So I can say like there will be some metrics that we are going to see in coming slides, right? So there are few parameters that we need to look into while doing the performance testing, right? We are going to call that as metrics in performance testing terminology, right? So if those metrics are good, right, then we don't have any issue. If there is some deviation in those metrics, then obviously your application performance is degrading because of some reason, right? So what exactly that reason is nothing but it may be because of the inappropriate application architecture, or it may be because of the poor hardware choices, right? Or it may be because of the faulty code implementations, right? So there are chances that the code, there is some unwanted looping in the code or unwanted conditions in the code, which is causing the high response time, right? There are chances that your server's hardware configuration may be not that much good, okay? So because of that also you may see the high response times, right? And also because of the inappropriate architecture too, okay? So these are all the factors which are going to cause the bottlenecks here, okay? So these are the basic things that we need to know, right? And finally, what is the main objective of performance testing here? Right? So performance testing main objective is to test the AUT, guys. AUT is nothing but application under test, right? So whatever the application that you are going to test, we are going to call that as the AUT. So for example, if I am taking the Flipkart application, right? So Flipkart application is the AUT for me, right? So we are going to test this application, right? Under the like production like environment, right? What is meant by production like environment? We discussed like different types of environments, like, huh? So what is production like environment here in this case? Anyone? What is environment we are
environment where we are
Yeah.
where we are testing, it should be exactly matching the production system, the configuration.
Yeah. So generally the lower environments, right? Especially the testing environment or staging environment, right? In this case, production like environment is nothing but the testing environment or staging environment, which is going to match same like your production environment, right? That is what the theory for sure, right? But practically that won't be possible, right? Practically it is not possible until and unless if that application is very small application and very less users are accessing that application, right? The reason is, let us take the example of Flipkart, okay? Flipkart or Facebook, whatever it may be, right? So if you take the Flipkart application as an example, right, what will happen? Flipkart application may have some 10K servers. I'm giving some example over here. Okay, just consider this as an example. That's it, right? So let us assume like Flipkart application is having like some 10K servers. Okay. So is it possible to maintain those 10K servers even in the lower environments also? That is test environment or staging environment too? Obviously, that is not possible, right? So if they are going to maintain in that way, right, what will happen? The cost of the project is going to be increased, right? So that is the reason why what they will do is they will maintain like 30% of production environment. Okay, they will maintain like 30% of production environment, prod environment. Okay. So whatever may be your testing environment or staging environment that you are going to test, right? So especially the test environment. If we discuss about the test environment, generally the test environment will be of 30% of your production environment. Okay. So for example, like if 10K servers are there in production environment, then 30% of that is going to be there in the test environment, right? If 9K users are some like 1 lakh users are accessing this application in production, then 30% of that users we are going to consider it and we need to test with that user load in test environment, right? So this is what in general that we are going to follow in real time. Okay. So what we will do is we are going to host the application under test in the production like environment, that is test environment, and we are going to test it with virtual users, right? Virtual user load. Virtual user load is nothing but tool generated user load, right? We are going to have like multiple performance testing tools like JMeter, Load Runner, and NeoLoad, right? So these tools are again performance testing tools which will automate automation tools. I can say these are also automation tools, but only the thing is which will measure the non-functional testing, right? Which will measure the non-functionalities, right? So there are automation tools like Selenium, right, which is going to handle the functional testing, but these tools are also automation tools which are going to handle the non-functional parts, right? So whenever if we are using any tool, obviously the user load, right? The number of user load, okay, whatever the number of users that we are sending, okay, that we are using to send the request, okay, those user load, we are going to call it as the virtual users, right? Those users, we are going to call it as the virtual users or V users, okay? So V users in short term, right? So these virtual users are going to be used in order to send the request to the server, right? So here there is no manual intervention, guys. Okay, here there is no manual intervention, right? Simply with the help of the tool, we are going to send the request to the server, right? By creating the virtual user load, right? So why we are doing this is nothing but in the production like environment, that is in test environment especially, right? We are going to test this application under some virtual user load and we are going to verify whether we are meeting this NFRs or not, right? NFRs means non-functional requirements, right? So in the software testing life cycle or software development life cycle, how we are going to gather the requirements in the first stage, right? So in the same way, in the performance testing life cycle that we are going to discuss in tomorrow's session, right? So there also we are going to gather some information, right? So that requirements gathering part, we are going to call it as the NFR here, right? NFR means non-functional requirements here, right? And also we are going to verify whether we are meeting the SLA or not, right? SLA is nothing but service level agreement, right? So what kind of SLAs most of you like have worked with, right? So most of you got from your client. What kind of SLAs that you guys are aware of? Anyone? Aparna, I think you are working on this. Right?
Less than 30 seconds.
Response times is less than 30 seconds. Very good. This is one kind of SLA that we are going to get it from the client. Yeah. Any other?
For that intended users, the CPU utilization and the memory should not break that some their threshold there
Yeah,
for 50 or 60%.
CPU memory. Okay. Yeah, this CPU memory utilizations should be less than some percentage. Okay, some percentage. Yeah, that is also fine. And main thing, one more main thing is there.
It's like application should handle this many users.
That is okay. Main thing is error percentage, right? Error percentage is generally the main thing, right? Generally, it should be less than like 3%. Okay, it should be less than 3%. So this is the major thing, right? Once if you run any kind of test, right? Obviously, the first thing that you are going to see is the response time as well as the error percentage, right? Later, if these two are good, right, then only we'll go for the CPU and memory utilizations, right? The reason is if the error percentage is more, then obviously we should not consider that particular test. So that is the reason why the first concentration is on the error percentage. And if the error percentage is less than 3%, then obviously we'll go and look into the response times, whether we are meeting the SLS in terms of response times or not. If we are meeting it, then we'll go for the CPU and memory utilization. In this way, the process will go. Okay. So this is the main objective of going for performance testing there, right? So yeah,
One,
go ahead.
just one point. So in some of the projects, we'll get some rare opportunities like if the application they have built it in the scratch, it's like they are migrating. That may be the scenario. At the time, we will get the opportunity to test the performance testing in the to be prod environment. So before it goes live, so whatever the changes are made in the application, they will do the DP refresh and they will get back to the original status. So we have done that one. So at that time, we'll exactly do the testing in a production environment only before it goes live.
Yes. Yes. Even production performance testing is also there. Okay. But again, right? So obviously, if it is a case, I will take one example of e-commerce application, right? So let us consider like same as Flipkart, right? Flipkart is an e-commerce application, right? So what we are going to do in production testing of Flipkart application, right? If I take an example here, so in production testing, generally we are not going to place the orders, right? So let us say if you are trying to purchase one product, right? If it is a lower environment, you can simply purchase a particular product, right? But if it is a production, generally we are not going to do that, right? What we will do is we'll do up to the last step, but we are not going to click the place order. Okay, so that is there. Yes, production testing is also very, very important, right? So previously, like no one showed interest on the production testing, right? But nowadays, because of all the issues, whatever that they are facing, right, in production environment especially, which they didn't face in other environments, right? Because of that, right, during the sale period especially, right, for this big billion day or some kind of sales, right? So during those particular days especially, right, they are going to test the application. Like before that itself, they are going to test this production environment performance testing. Yeah, that is there. Is that what your question? Are we going to do it in production or not, right?
No, I'm just telling that we'll get the opportunity if their application is new or if you are building a altogether a new servers at that time we can get the
No,
opportunity.
it's not like only at the time of new application, Kirti, right? So even for the already existing applications also, right? As I mentioned, right? If they are not seeing any issues in the lower environments, but once the code is deployed in the production environment, then they started seeing some errors, means then obviously they are going to ask us to do the performance testing in production environment also to verify what exactly is happening over there. In both
At
the
that time we have to give the less user load, as well as we have to see the time frame where that many users are not into the system.
See, even though if it is production environment or test environment, whatever may be the environment, first thing that you are going to do is you are going to get the user load with the help of Google Analytics. Okay. So if you are, let us say, if you consider like the peak hour, right? What generally we will do is for performance testing, we are going to consider the peak hour, right? So if you go for Google Analytics, so over the year, right? Let us say if your sale is there on August, right? Let us consider the August 15th sale, right? So on August 15th, right? During that one particular day, that means during that 24 hours, right? On which particular hour, right? On which particular hour you have more users, okay, on the server, right? So that particular hour we need to consider, and on that particular hour, what is the user load? Okay, that user load we are going to take here, right? So let us say in production on that particular hour, some 50K users are there, right? So what generally we need to do is we need to test with 50K users, right? But that is really not going to be possible with the tools that we have. Why? Because this JMeter is an open source tool, okay? Whereas Load Runner and NeoLoad, these are paid tools. Okay, we need to purchase license in order to do the testing, right? The license cost of these two tools are high. Okay, so Load Runner is too high, whereas NeoLoad is somewhat better than Load Runner, but it is also high. Okay, so because of the constraints over here, right? Because of the license constraints over here, right? No one wants to purchase 50K user license here. Okay, so whatever the maximum license that they will go with is 8K or 10K, right? 8K or 10K is the maximum user load license that they go with, that too for a specific time period, right? So what they will do is, in these cases, instead of targeting the user load, okay, what they are going to do is during this peak hour, right? These 50,000 users, like how many transactions they perform. Okay, let us say if 50,000 users on a whole on this particular application for user registration part, right? If they are doing some 10K transactions, right? For product booking, right? They are getting like some 20K product bookings are happened, right? In those cases, right, what we need to consider is instead of taking the user load, we need to consider this transactions happen per hour, right? TPH, transactions per hour. We need to consider this TPH, and what we need to do is we need to develop the script and we need to calculate the pacing properly in such a way that we are going to reach this particular user load, reach this particular transactions per hour with this user load. Okay. So this is what we can do in this case, right? The problem here is in these two tools, we have the license issue, whereas in the JMeter tool, right? So there is no license, but we need more number of uh, virtual machines. Okay. So master slave concept will come into the picture in JMeter or distributed testing. We are going to call it as a distributed testing also, right? So where in order to run the test with more number of users, right? We need obviously multiple machines, and JMeter is not going to work that much effectively, I can say, for more number of users like 50K or 1 lakh users. It will work, but the setup is going to be too high. Okay. So that is the reason why they will do in this way. Is it clear? Kirti?
Yeah, fine, fine.
So this is what is going to happen, guys. Okay. So with this basic idea, like we'll go to the next slide, right? So why performance testing is required? So we already know that, right? If performance testing is not going to be done on specific application, then obviously there are chances that we may see slow response times, right? Poor scalability and prolonged response times, right? So slow run times, sorry, slow run times and prolonged response times, right? And right, even shorter down periods, right, will be more costly, right? So if a sale happened, right? If you remember the sale that happened in India, the Flipkart sale for the first time in India, right? So they didn't expected that much user load, and all of a sudden, as more number of users are accessing that application servers went down, and they have faced huge loss on that particular sale, right? So the first Flipkart sale. Not only that, many other examples are also there, but I hope you guys are well aware of that issues, right? So this is one example that I can give over here, right? So that is the reason why performance testing is very much required. Okay. And it's always preferable to do the performance testing regularly. Okay. It is always preferable, guys, for each and every build, right? For each and every build, it is better to do that, right? That means for each and every release, the performance testing is required. Okay. And we need to compare the current release result with the previous release result, so that we'll get some clarity, right? How the previous result is and how the current result is, and which particular release results are good. Okay, we'll get some clarity out of it, right? So those things, anyhow, we are going to see it in our coming sessions. Okay. So with this, we need to understand like what are the different types of performance testings that we are going to do. Okay. So load testing is one type of testing that we are going to do, guys. Right. So again, right, this load testing main purpose is to measure the response times. Okay. So generally, the load testing main purpose is to measure the response time, and this is going to be done under the typical workloads, right? Typical workloads in here is nothing but peak load. In this case, peak load. Okay. So whatever may be the peak hour that we are going to consider, in that hour, whatever the load that we are going to get, we need to consider that as the peak load, right? And with that peak load, we are going to do this load testing, right? And this particular load testing should be executed, okay, for 1 hour to 2 hours, right? 1 hour to 2 hours, right? So within that 1 hour to 2 hours, our major concentration is going to be there on response times, right? How the response times are. And obviously, if the response times are good, then the other factors will come into the picture, right? But our major concentration here is to look into this response times. Okay. So this is what the load testing is. Like I'm just giving you on a high level, guys, right? With examples, with setup and everything we'll discuss in our coming sessions, right? Once after completing the scripting part and after completing the workload modeling, right? We'll jump into the test execution setup and everything, right? At that time, we'll have one separate session, right? Wherein I'm going to explain all the different types of test executions that we can perform, right? With proper setup in JMeter and everything, right? So you'll be more clear at that time. But on a high level, these are the points that you must know before entering into the performance testing concept, right? So the next type of testing that we are going to perform is the stress testing, guys, right? So this stress testing, why generally we are going to do it is nothing but in order to just verify whether like at which particular point our application is going to crash, right? At which particular point our application is going to crash. So in order to identify that, or in order to verify that, we are going to do this stress testing, right? So generally what we will do is once the load test is done, right, with peak user load, right, if that load test went well, then what immediately we are going to do is we are going to do the stress testing based on the client request, right? So we'll start with the peak user load. Peak user load, already load testing went well, right? So that is the reason why what we'll do, we'll increase the user load to 150% of the peak user load, right? So 150% of the peak user load. Let us say if you are going with 100 users as the peak user load, okay, it should be the 150% of this 100 users, right? So with you'll start with 150% of the peak user load, and you're going to start testing the application, right? So for 15 minutes, you're going to run the test and you'll verify it, right? If everything is going good, right, then obviously what we are going to do is we are going to increase the load still again, right, to 200% or 250% or so. Okay. So in that way, right, we are going to keep on increasing the user load till the application is going to crash, right? So what the major theme here is at the end of the test, right? So at which particular user load, okay, you started seeing the degradation in response times, and at which particular user load you started seeing the like 500 internal server errors, and finally at which particular user load your application is completely crashed. Okay, that means even whatever may be the request that you are going to send, finally if you are getting this 500 error completely, or else at least your the major message as your servers are down, right? So that kind of testing, we are going to call it as the stress testing here, right? Coming to the next type of testing, that is the spike testing, guys, right? So generally, right, in real time, what will happen if any specific phone sale is there at 11 a.m., let us assume, right? So iPhone is giving some 40% discount. Okay, that sale starts at 11 a.m. and it ends at 11:15, right? Only for 15 minutes flash sale is there, right? So what happens during that period? More number of users are going to access, right? Before that flash sale, right, up to 11 a.m., right? Let us assume some 1 lakh users are there on the server, right? But during that particular 15 minutes period, that means 11 to 11:15, right? What generally will happen is the user load will be too much high, right? That means from 1 lakh to the user load will increase up to 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs, something like that, right? But after that 15 minutes, again, the user load will come back to 1 lakh or 80,000, something like that. Whoever users trying to purchase that iPhone, right? They will leave after that 15 minutes, right? Obviously, this is going to happen, right? That kind of behavior, if you want to test it, then we'll go for the spike testing, guys, right? So for rapidly changing workloads, sorry, for rapidly changing workloads, we'll do the spike testing here, right? So sudden increase in user load, sudden decrease in user load. Okay, if you want to replicate that behavior, then we'll go for the spike testing part, right? And coming to the next one is the endurance testing, guys. So this endurance testing, what it will do is, it's a long duration test, right? For an extended period, we are going to do this, right? So generally, we are going to do this endurance testing with 70% of the user load. Okay, 70% of the peak user load, I can say, right? So we are going with 70% of peak user load, and we will run this for minimum of 4 hours, right? So 8 hours or 1 week or even for 1 month, okay, based on the requirement again, right? So generally, right, in most of the companies, we'll go for 8 hours endurance testing, guys, right? So for longer duration, if you are going with some specific user load, how your application performance is, right? Whether your application is able to sustain uh, like giving response to the request over that extended period or not, right? So that is the main theme of this endurance test, right? Coming to the next one is the volume testing, right? So this volume testing, what it will do is it will check like how efficiently a system can process varying database volumes, right? So sometimes database, like in most of the cases, right, where any bank transactions or any such kind of things are there, right? Database volumes are very much required, right? So whenever if you are doing batch processes, right? So if you take any banking application or insurance applications, right? Especially the banking applications, whatever the transactions that you made from morning, right? What they will do from evening, like afternoon 3 onwards till evening or night, okay, they will run the batch jobs, right? So that batch jobs are very, very important. At that time, right, there will be more stress on your database, right? Obviously, right? So in those cases, this volume testing is very much required, guys. So to understand like how your database performance is, right? And finally, the scalability testing here, right? So scalability testing, already we discussed that, the same thing, right? So by increasing the user load, we can see like how your application is going to behave with the same set of configuration, right? Same hardware configuration setup, right? So these are all the different types of performance testing that we have, right? And majorly, like in any company, right, we are going to execute these 4 tests only, right? Load testing, stress testing, spike testing, as well as endurance testing, right? Very rarely we'll go with volume testing until and unless if it is required, right? Scalability, anyhow, like if you do these 4 tests, that is enough. No need of the scalability testing, obviously, right? You'll come to know if you do the stress testing, right? Some part of the stress testing will help you to understand the scalability also, right? So no need of concentrating much on the scalability testing. So most of the 95% of the companies, they'll go with only these 4 types of test executions. That's it, right? Any doubts in this?
Yeah. Kumar, with respect to volume testing,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if we have the application in the database. So in that time, how do we manage with the large volumes of data?
How do we manage in the sense I didn't get your question?
Uh, for example, if you want to see the stability or the scalability of the database during that time,
Mm-hmm.
so the JMeter provides like the test data generation or the volume generation.
Yeah, JMeter have an option to connect with the database, right? And whatever the queries that are going to run as a process of batch jobs, right? Or even in order to pull the data from database, or in order to insert the data from database to the database, right? Those kind of queries you can execute through JMeter with some user load. Okay, we have that concept also, database integration with JMeter also in our sessions, right? So at that time, what I'll show you clearly, like how we are going to connect with the database, okay, and how we can trigger the like how we can insert the query and how we can trigger the particular query with some user load, okay, so that you will get some clarity. So what we are going to do here is we are going to again do the same kind of testing, but we are going to test only the queries here, right? So let us say if I'm trying to understand the performance of a specific database. I'll take all the major queries that are required, and I'm going to like use this database integration part with JMeter, and I'll run the queries with the help of JMeter with some user load. And at that time, how your database is behaving, right? Are we getting any deadlocks in the database, or are we getting any like queues in the database, right? So those kind of things we are going to concentrate mainly.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys, from anyone? So with this basic idea of what are the different types of testing, okay, we'll try to understand the types of performance metrics, guys, right? First of all, what is performance testing metrics, right? So performance testing metrics are nothing but the measures or parameters, right? So these are the measures or parameters which are going to be gathered during the performance testing process, guys. Okay, during the performance testing process, we need to measure, we need to gather some parameter values or measures, right? So based on that particular parameters values as well as the measures values, only we are going to finalize whether our test went well or not. Okay. So the test execution, whether it is whether it went well or not, right? We are going to finalize it based on these parameter values only. Okay. So those measures are parameters. We are going to call it as performance testing metrics. Okay, performance testing metrics, right? So generally, what are the different metrics that you guys know? Majorly, 2 different types of metrics are there. What are those that we need to concentrate? Any guess from your?
Failed transactions, throughput.
No, like again, they are divided. They are sub metrics actually, I can say, right? So mainly for performance testing, 2 different types of metrics are there. One is client side metric, and the second one is server side metrics, right? So client side metrics are there, server side metrics are there. These are the 2 major metrics. Again, whatever this transactions per second, response times, these are all are going to come under the client side or server side, right? So that we'll discuss now. Okay. So let me quickly move to the next slide, right? I just want to skip this slide. Okay. So need for performance testing metrics, like it is a basic concept. You can read it. Okay. I'll share the video or you can go through this slide. Okay. So important performance testing metrics, like on a whole, okay, are the CPU utilization. The first one is the CPU utilization. Second one is the memory utilization. Third one is the response time. Fourth one is the average load time. Fifth one is throughput. Sixth one is average latency. Seventh one is bandwidth. Eighth one is request per second. Ninth one is error rate. And 10th one is transactions passed or failed, right? So these are the major metrics, okay, the basic metrics that we are going to look into, okay? The basic metrics at the time of test execution, we need to concentrate on these metrics, okay? So if you remember, right, we already discussed about the response times. We already discussed the error rate, right? Many things, but we'll see what exactly the CPU utilization is, right? So CPU utilization is nothing but it is the percentage of CPU capacity utilized in processing the request, right? So let us say if you are sending some 10K requests, right? How much amount of CPU capacity is being utilized in order to process those requests, right? That will give us the CPU utilization, right? So this CPU utilization should be less than 70% is the preferable value, okay? So always the CPU and memory utilization should be less than 70% or 60%, something like that, right? So there are some standard values, okay? So that which we need to follow, right? So I'll provide you one document, right? So wherein we have all the metrics along with some standard values, okay? So that you will get some clarity, like how much percentage is the peak percentage, and beyond that we can't go, right? Those kind of metrics clearly is going to be there in that document. So that document is going to be really helpful for you guys, okay? So I'll provide you that while we are going with the analysis part, right? So this is all about the CPU utilization part, right? How much CPU capacity is being utilized in like in processing the request, right? And coming to the memory utilization, right? The same thing, right? The memory utilization, like especially the utilization of primary memory, right? Primary memory while processing the request again, right? While processing this request. Generally, this should be also less than, I can say like 60% or 70%, okay? It's always better to maintain less than 60%. If it is going to be more than 60%, also that is fine, but not more than something like 75% or 80%, right? If it goes beyond that, then obviously your server may not work properly, okay? And coming to the next one is the response time, right? So response time, we already know it is the total time between the sending the request and receiving the response, right? So from sending the request onwards till we are going to get the response, whatever the time it has taken in between, that we are going to call it as the response time, right? So obviously we can say if the response times are good, the performance of the website or application is good, right? That means if the response times are good, means less response times. We need to get less response times, right? So this is all about the response time part and the average load time, right? So this metric, what it will do is it will measure the time taken by a web page to complete the loading process, right? So see, in a particular page, right, we are going to have multiple requests, guys, right? So let us say if I am going to I'm going to show that in tomorrow's session while we are discussing about this developer tools concept, right? So if you open the developer tools and if you type like www.flipkart.com on your browser and if you click enter, right, what generally will happen is you will see multiple number of requests there, right? So what are the major requests, right? So main request we are going to see, right? As well as sub request we are going to see, as well as embedded resources we are going to see, right? Embedded resources are nothing but again JavaScript files, CSS files, image files, icons, okay, all those things we are going to see. Main request we are going to see, sub requests, as well as the embedded resources we will see, right? So average load time is nothing but It is the time taken by the web page to complete the loading process, right? In order to load all these things, how much time it has taken on an average, right? That is nothing but your average load time, guys. Okay. So we'll discuss more about this with some specific slides. I have some specific slides related to this full page response time, as I'm showing here. Right, we'll discuss each and every point of this full page response time in detail. Okay, in our coming sessions. Okay, so as of now, I'm just giving you on a high level about these metrics. Okay, so that is all about the average load time. And coming to the next one is the throughput, guys. Right. So throughput, again, this throughput is somewhat tricky, right? In load runner, we have some specific definition. In JMeter, we have some specific definition, right? When it comes to JMeter, right, I can say like it measures the number of transactions an application can handle in a second, right? So that means transactions per second. We are going to call it as the transactions per second, right? TPS. So it is the number of transactions that your application can handle in a second. We are going to call it as the throughput, right? Or in other words, right, the rate at which a network or computer receives the request per second. Okay, this is also one more definition, right? When it comes to load runner, right, bytes per second, right? In terms of network means in terms of bytes or kilobytes here, right? So this definition will work for the load runner, right? So in terms of load runner, you are going to measure the throughput in terms of the network, that is bytes per second or kilobytes per second or MB per second, right? Like that, right? Whereas in terms of the JMeter, we are going to consider this as the transactions per second, right? So this is all about the throughput part. And coming to the next one is average latency or wait time, guys, right? So it is the time spent by a request in a queue before getting processed, right? So how much time it is waited in the queue before it is going to be processed, right? That particular time we are going to call it as the average latency or wait time, right? This should be very less always, remember, right? Even though if you are running the test with high user load, right, this latency time or the wait time should be very less, right? If your requests are going to be there in the queue, right, if more number of requests are going to be there in the queue, then obviously it indicates that your application performance is not good. Okay. So coming to the last one, that is the next one, that is the bandwidth, right? So bandwidth is nothing but it is the measurement of the volume of data transferred per second, right? So how we are going to call our internet bandwidth, right? So 100 Mbps, 200 Mbps or 150 Mbps, like that, right? So whenever if I'm going to ask like what is your internet speed, you're going to say like 100 Mbps speed, something like that, right? So that is nothing but how much volume of data transferred over second, right? Per second is going to give us the bandwidth, right? And these are the three, again, major things, last three things. One is the request per second, right? So this matrix refers to the number of requests handled by the application per second, guys, right? How many number of requests your application handled per second? That will use the request per second, right? And error rate, we already know, right? Percentage of requests resulting in errors or percentage of error, we are going to call it as the error rate, right? So when compared to the total number of requests, right? So let us say if total number of requests are 100, right? And in that like some 30 requests are failing, right? So we are going to calculate the percentage of requests failing to the number of requests. Okay, that will give us the error rate here, right? And coming to the last one is transactions per second, right? So this is again passed or failed. Two are there here, right? So transactions passed or transactions failed here, right? So how many transactions passed will give us like the total transactions which are in passed state, and failed transactions will give us total transactions which are in failed state, right? So generally while doing the test execution, you will see both, right? So let us say if 100 transactions are passed, in that 30 transactions are failed means total failed transactions are 30, total passed transactions are 70. In that way, we are going to consider, right? So this is the These are the basic metrics that we are going to keep in mind, right, while doing the test execution, right? But as I mentioned, right, so the performance testing metrics are mainly divided into two categories. One is the client side performance testing metrics, and the second one is the server side performance testing metrics, right? We need to understand which metrics comes under the client side and which metrics comes under the server side, guys. Okay. So when coming to this client side metrics, right? So these are all the metrics, right? Whatever the metrics that we have over here will come under the client side metrics, guys, right? So the first one is the TTFB, time to first byte, right? So generally, right, whenever if you are opening any application, right, let us say you are opening Flipkart application to buy one particular phone, right? You have sale on that particular day, right? Both Flipkart, the sale is there on Flipkart as well as Amazon, right? So you are trying to purchase the phone on Flipkart. You are trying to open the website, but you are not seeing anything on the page, right? You enter the like flipkart.com, right? And you pressed enter on your keyboard, but still nothing is there on your web page, right? So then obviously what you will do, you will move to the Amazon site and you will try to purchase your phone on that particular site, right? So in order to make the user to sit on that particular page, right? So what generally these companies will do is, the application will do is, right? So immediately after sending the request, at least some kind of color, right? Or some kind of image icon, right? It will display, right? So within how much time, okay, that change is going to be there on your browser, right? So that represents the time to first byte here, right? So time to first byte is nothing but it measures the web server's responsiveness, guys, right? And its total duration starting from the user making an HTTP request to the first byte of the page received by the client browser. First byte of page received by the client browser here, in the sense, it may be some color, okay, colorful background, or it may be some sort of image which is of loading type, right? Whatever it may be, right? So that what it will do is it will hold the user on that particular application, right? So this TTFB value should be always less. Okay. And the next one is the page size or weight, right? So it is the overall size of the particular web page, right? Page size represents overall size of the particular web page. Don't worry, I'm going to show all these things in the developer tools session, guys, right? I'm going to show all these things in the developer tools session, and how the browser is going to check these things, right? How we are going to get the value of that particular KPI, right? Those things we will discuss in developer tools, right? And the next one is the time to interact, right? So time to interact is nothing but it is the time taken by the website to become fully interactive, right? See, sometimes what will happen, right? Your page is still loading, but you may see some icons, right? So you may see some mobile icon, right? If you are to purchase that mobile, what you will do, you are not going to wait till the page is going to load completely. You are trying to hit that particular mobile icon, right? So, but that mobile icon is not going to work, right? Until and unless if it is going to completely loaded, right? So that time to interact, this time to interact will help us to identify, right, within how much time your website is fully interactive, right? Again, this also should be very less, right? This time also should be very less. Within less time only, we need to make our website more interactive. Then only more number of users will be there on our application, right? Next one is time to render, right? It is the time to time taken by a web page to load or reload. Okay. So how much time it is taking to load the page or reloading the page, right? That is nothing but your time to render, right? Next one is the speed index, guys, right? It measures how quickly the content is displayed during the page load, right? So how much time it has taken to display the content within that particular page, right? That indicates the speed index here, right? And the next one is the load time, right? It is the average amount of the time which is taken by a page to show up on your screen, right? So this is nothing but your load time, guys. And finally, payload, right? So it is the difference between essential information in a chunk of data and the information used to support it. So generally for post calls, put calls, right, we are going to get these payloads. What this payload will do is it is going to have the data, right, which is going to support your request, which is going to support your request. So let us say if you are trying to do the user registration, right? So once if you click on user register button, whatever the data that you have entered should go to the server, right? So how it will go to the server is nothing but that chunk of data will be transferred to the server in the form of a payload. Okay, in the form of a payload. So generally this payload will be there for post calls and put calls especially, right? We'll see those things again. But these are all the client side metrics that we have, guys, right? And what are the tools which are available to measure that client side metrics, right? So page speed insights is there, right? Lighthouse is there, GT metrics, Slow. These are all the different metrics. Sorry, these are all the different tools that are available in order to measure these client side metrics, right? In that Lighthouse is the inbuilt tool. Okay, in that Lighthouse is the inbuilt tool which will help us to measure these client side metrics, right? So inbuilt tool in the sense we can simply install this particular Lighthouse plugin in our browser. Okay, in our Google Chrome browser, but inbuilt it is already there in developer tools, right? You can check it out from developer tools also, right? I'll show this Lighthouse part, okay, in our next session, right? So coming to the next one, server side metrics, guys, right? These requests per second, uptime, error rates, thread counts, peak response time, throughput, bandwidth, right? Whatever that we discussed, right, previously, except few points over here, right? So these are all will come under the server side metrics again, right? The CPU utilization, memory utilization, all these things will come under the server side metrics, guys, right? So in order to measure these server side metrics, we are going to have multiple APM tools like New Relic, App Dynamics, Datadog, SolarWinds, right? And Dynatrace, right? So as a part of this training session, I'll show you this Dynatrace part, okay, on a high level again, right? So these are all the client side metrics and server side metrics that we need to keep in mind. And also we need to know the tools, which tools are going to be used in order to measure these metrics, guys. Okay. So this is very, very important. Otherwise, what will happen? Like you may not give proper answer in the interview. Okay. So yeah, with this, what I'll do is I'll stop the session here for today. Okay. If you don't have any questions here till now?
Mohan, when you are talking about the server side metrics,
Mm-hmm.
you listed out tools like Dynatrace and Datadog and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, load runner or JMeter, they also measure some of these server side metrics, right?
Yes,
If
we
you're
have
not the
some
case,
plugins like Perfmon. You are talking about the Perfmon, right?
yes, yes.
Yes, Perfmon will measure, but only the problem that we have with the Perfmon is nothing but you need to install that Perfmon plugin on the server, right? You need to install JMeter and you need to install the Perfmon plugin, okay, on your server. So we like generally no company will allow you to do that. So JMeter is an open source tool. Anyone can hack your server with the help of that Perfmon plugins or something, right? In most of the companies, they won't allow to even install the plugins. The reason is because of the security. Recently, like I think 1 year or 2 years back, right? We got some issue, issue with this log4j or something, right? So
Right, right.
yeah. So why we are getting that kind of issues means because of these plugins only, right? So Perfmon, in order to keep this server monitoring continuously, we need to run that Perfmon on this particular some on particular servers continuously, right? That will obviously affect your security things. So that is the reason why they won't allow that. But again, right? So for simply showing purpose, it is there. We can use it until and unless if your client says that I can't bear with this particular monitoring tool. Okay, if your client is okay to go with the monitoring tool, then it's always preferable to go with the monitoring tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we are talking about the server side metrics,
Mhm.
server are we talking about here? Are we talking about the web server or application server or the database server or all servers?
Whatever may be the server where we are getting the issue. So let us say if we are seeing some issue, right? That issue may be because of the web server or maybe because of the app server or maybe because of the DB server. Okay, that we need to identify first of all. So let us say we are sending some request and that particular request is successfully passing through the web server, but in the app server, because of some specific service, it is unable to run that particular service. Okay, let us say that service related parts are down, let us assume, right? Then what will happen? Obviously, you may not get the proper response from that, right? So you may get the wrong response. Because of that, you need to concentrate on the app layer only, right? Application servers only. So if there is some issue with the database related thing, we need to go with the database. It's completely on all servers.
Okay. So looking at these metrics, would we be able to pinpoint exactly where the issue is, like in the example that you just gave? Would we be able to pinpoint that the issue is in the app server and not in the web server?
Yeah, that will be done with the help of Dynatrace only. We can't do without Dynatrace.
Okay.
Why? Because Dynatrace is the tool which is going to monitor your servers, right? So obviously, where the error is we can predict it. We can look into that error with the help of Dynatrace only. So Dynatrace will give us which service is hitting, and exactly at which particular point we are getting the error, right? So let me show you that specific thing with the help of one image. Let me try to open that. I don't think we are going to have that image or not, but let me check. Trace, Dynatrace. Okay, let me go for images. If you see this image, right? Hope you guys are able to see this image, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you see here, whenever if you are calling the cart service, okay. So whenever if you are adding the item to your cart, right, this cart service will call here, right, in Dynatrace. If you see, there is some red line on this left hand side, right, which indicates that there is some failure in this cart service, right? So failure in the cart service itself uh, indicates that there is some failure in the complete process, somewhere in the complete process, not exactly on the card service, but somewhere in the complete process, right? So first what we need to do is we need to go to the trace of Dynatrace, and then in Dynatrace under this particular card service, if you expand this trace, right, you can clearly see that there is a third party currency converter here, which is failing. If you see this third party service where my mouse is there, okay, on the bottom end, this is failing actually, right? So this is being called twice here. The same call. This is also third party currency converter only. Generally, this currency converter should call only once, but as it is failed for the first time, it is being called for the second time, right? Again, for the second time also it is failing, right? So if you see on the right hand side, these blue lines are the response times, right? These blue lines are the response times, right? Like how much time it is taking, right? In order to load this, and also where exactly the issue is, right? If you click on this particular converter, right? So then you'll get one more pop-up. There it will show what exactly the issue is, right? In this way, we need to identify, right? It's always not like on the cart page, but somewhere this particular cart service is calling some other services internally. If that service is also failing, we can identify with the help of Dynatrace.
Okay.
Hope I think this answer is clear, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mohan, one question I have.
Yes.
So in the previous thing, you mentioned during the production performance,
Mhm.
we do capture the Google Analytics data. So just I would like to know, what if our particular application is not into the production? It is still running on the lower end environment. So at that point time, how do we decide the number of users and those metrics?
Yeah, I'll discuss that one once if we start the NFR gathering part. Okay. See, completely we are going to rely it on Google Analytics. That is the first thing, right? So if Google Analytics is also not there, then we don't have option based on the competitor details, right? Based on getting the competitor application details. Let us say the Flipkart application. If you take the Flipkart application, the competitor of Flipkart is Amazon, right? So we need to somehow get the details of that Amazon application, like how many users are roughly accessing that application, right? Those kind of things we are going to get it. If still that competitor is also not there, then the only thing that we can do is based on the information provided by the business analyst, right? So business analyst, they may have some idea of on that particular domain, right? So they will suggest like initially, if we are releasing this application for the first time, we may get this much of user load or something like that. Or else based on your experience only, you need to do that. So if nothing is there, we need to test in different stages. Like let's start with some X user load, right? If your application is performing well with that, then try increasing some more user load and verify it, right? In that way, you need to understand like how your application servers are working. There is no other option
Okay.
apart from that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Okay. So if questions are not there, we'll end the session here for today. Thanks for